Good morning, my dear friends. I'm sitting here in my old wicker chair, my hands still trembling as I speak to you today. My name is Dulcinea. I'm 72 years old, and I never thought the day would come when my own daughter would call me a filthy old pig, just for asking about the money my husband had left for us. From this little veranda in Antigua, where I've lived my entire life, I want to share with you the most painful story I've ever experienced, but also the one that taught me that God never abandons his children, not even when we believe there's no hope left. It was a Tuesday in October when my daughter Patricia arrived from Guatemala City, after months without visiting me. I was embroidering as always, waiting for her with my heart full of joy. You know how we mothers are. No matter how old our children get, we still light up when they come home. I had prepared her favorite meal, pepillan, just the way my grandmother taught me, with that special touch of love that only a mother's hands can give. But when I asked her about the savings that her father had left for my medicines and household expenses, her eyes filled with a coldness I had never seen before. Not even when she was a rebellious teenager did I see such contempt in her gaze. "Don't bother me with that nonsense, you filthy old pig," she screamed at me, throwing her purse on my embroidered tablecloth. "Dad is gone and I handle everything now. You don't need to worry about money anymore." Those words hit me like lightning. Vieja cochina, filthy old pig, from the mouth of the child I had carried in my womb for 9 months, the child I had nursed through countless sleepless nights, the child for whom I had sacrificed everything. I felt my chest tighten, my breath becoming short, the embroidery hoop fell from my hands, and the bright threads scattered across the floor like my broken dreams. For 72 years, no one had ever spoken to me with such disrespect, and it was coming from my own flesh and blood. "Patricia," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "I am your mother. I only asked because I need to buy my blood pressure medication and—" "I don't want to hear excuses," she interrupted, her voice echoing through my small house. "You're getting old and confused. I'll decide what you need and when you need it." In that moment, I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my entire life. This woman standing in my living room, this stranger with my daughter's face, was treating me like I was nothing, like I was a burden, an inconvenience in her busy life. After she left, slamming the door so hard that my ceramic saints on the shelf trembled, I sat alone in the silence of my house, the house where I had raised her, where I had celebrated her first steps, her first words, her graduation day. If you too have felt this pain, if you too have been hurt by your own children, I want you to know that this channel is your home, a place where you can express what you feel without being judged. Give this video a like if it touches your heart, subscribe so we can continue supporting each other, and tell me in the comments if you've lived through something similar, because what I'm about to tell you changed my life forever. What I discovered the next day about my daughter made me realize that sometimes God allows us to see the truth in the most unexpected ways, even when that truth breaks our hearts into 1,000 pieces. That night, while tears soaked my pillow, I remembered every sacrifice I had made for that child, every single one. My mind traveled back through the years like pages in an old photo album, each memory more painful than the last. I remembered when Patricia was 18 and dreamed of studying medicine in the capital. We didn't have money. My husband Roberto worked as a carpenter, and I made a few quetzals selling my embroidered huipiles to tourists who visited Antigua. But when she got accepted to university, I saw such hope in her eyes. Without telling Roberto, I went to the old jewelry box my mother had left me. Inside were the only valuable things I owned: my wedding ring with the small diamond, my grandmother's gold earrings, and a silver bracelet Roberto had given me for our 10th anniversary. My hands shook as I wrapped them in a cloth. "Señora Dulcinea," Don Esteban the jeweler said when I placed them on his counter, "are you sure about this? These pieces have been in your family for generations." "My daughter's education is more important than any jewelry," I told him, though my heart was breaking. "She's going to be a doctor and help people." I never told Patricia about those jewels. When she asked how we got the money for her first semester, I just said, "God provides, mija. He always provides." But medicine was expensive, and Roberto's work wasn't enough. So I started taking in more embroidery work, staying up until 2 or 3 in the morning by candlelight to save on electricity. My fingers would bleed from the needle pricks, but I kept going. Each stitch was a prayer. Each thread was my love for my daughter. When Roberto got sick with diabetes, everything became harder. The medicine was expensive, and he couldn't work as much. I remember one terrible week when we had no money left, and Patricia called from university saying she needed books. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, saving every centavo for Roberto's insulin. But I sold my mother's sewing machine, the one she had taught me to use when I was just 7 years old. The buyer gave me enough for Patricia's books and Roberto's medicine. That night, I sat on the floor where my mother's machine used to be and cried. Not from hunger, but from the empty space where my connection to my mother had been. "Mommy, when I become a doctor, I'm going to take care of you forever," Patricia told me during one of her weekend visits home. She hugged me tight, and I smelled her hair. Still the same sweet scent from when she was little. "You and Papa will never worry about money again. I'm going to buy you a beautiful house and give you everything you deserve." Those words kept me going through the darkest times. When Roberto died suddenly of a heart attack during Patricia's final year of university, I was left alone with debts and grief. But I didn't tell Patricia. I didn't want to interrupt her studies. I sold vegetables in the market, cleaned houses, and even worked as a maid for wealthy families in Antigua. My hands, once soft from years of careful embroidery, became rough and cracked. My back ached from scrubbing floors, but I endured it all. Patricia graduated with honors. I was so proud, sitting in that auditorium in my only good dress, watching my daughter receive her diploma. She hugged me afterward and whispered, "This is all because of you, Mommy. I'll never forget what you did for me." But she did forget. Somehow, somewhere along the way, she forgot the mother who bled for her dreams, who went hungry so she could eat, who gave up everything so she could have a future. Now, at 72, sitting in this same house where I sacrificed so much, I wondered where that grateful young woman had gone. What happened to the daughter who once promised to take care of me forever? The woman who called me a filthy old pig? Was this really the same child I had loved so completely, so unconditionally? Where had I gone wrong? What had I done to deserve such cruelty from the person I loved most in this world? The next morning, while I was sweeping where Patricia had been sitting, something shiny caught my eye under the sofa. At first I thought it was just a piece of broken glass from one of my ceramic figurines. But when I bent down to pick it up, I realized it was Patricia's phone. She must have dropped it in her hurry to leave after our argument. My first instinct was to call her immediately, but then the screen lit up by itself, and I saw something that made my blood freeze in my veins. A message had just arrived from someone named Carlos, Patricia's husband. The preview showed just enough words to make me stop breathing. "Did you talk to the old lady about the house yet?" My hands began to tremble. Old lady? Is that how they referred to me? I knew I shouldn't read her messages, but something deep in my mother's heart told me I needed to see what was really happening. I touched the screen, and more messages appeared. What I read there destroyed everything I thought I knew about my daughter. "The old lady's getting more annoying about the money Roberto left," Patricia had written to Carlos the day before. "She keeps asking questions about the savings account." "Just tell her there's no money left," Carlos replied. "We need to move fast with the house sale before she gets suspicious." My heart stopped. House sale? What house sale? I kept reading, each message like a dagger in my chest. "I'm thinking we should get her declared mentally incompetent," Patricia wrote. "That way, we can take control of everything legally. The house in Antigua is worth at least 200,000 quetzales, maybe more with all the tourist interest in that area." "Good idea," Carlos responded. "Dr. Mendoza owes me a favor. He could write a report saying she has dementia or something." "The old lady won't last much longer anyway," Patricia continued. "She's already 72 and has high blood pressure. Once she's gone, we can sell everything and finally get that apartment in Zone 10 we've been wanting." I had to sit down. My legs couldn't support me anymore. This was my daughter, my Patricia, talking about me like I was already dead, like I was just an obstacle between her and my house, the house where she was born, where she took her first steps, where her father and I had built our life together. But there was more. So much more. I've already told my brothers that Mom is losing her mind, she wrote. Luis and Carmen believe me. They think she's getting confused and forgetting things. I told them she asked me the same question 3 times during my last visit. That was a lie, a complete lie. I had only asked once about the money, and I remember our conversation perfectly. But Patricia was telling her siblings, my own sons, that I was losing my mental capacity. Perfect, Carlos replied. The more witnesses we have to her mental decline, the easier it will be to get guardianship. Have you talked to the lawyer yet? I have an appointment with him next week. He says that with medical documentation and family testimony, we can get temporary guardianship within a month. I couldn't breathe. They weren't just planning to take my house. They were planning to take my dignity, my independence, my very identity. They wanted to declare me incompetent, like I was nothing more than a confused old woman who couldn't take care of herself. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered onto the floor. I sat there in my living room, surrounded by all the memories of my life, and realized that everything I had worked for, everything I had sacrificed for, was about to be stolen from me by the very person I had given my life to raise. My house wasn't just a house. It was where Roberto and I had spent our wedding night, where Patricia and her brothers had played as children, where I had nursed Roberto through his final illness, where I had cried and prayed and hoped and dreamed for more than 50 years, and Patricia saw it as nothing more than money in the bank. In that moment, I understood that the daughter I thought I knew had died somewhere along the way, and in her place was a stranger who saw me not as her mother, but as an inconvenience to be dealt with as quickly and efficiently as possible. My hands trembled so much I almost dropped the phone again when I kept reading. But I had to know everything. I had to understand how deep this betrayal went. There were more messages, older ones, going back months. Patricia had been planning this for a long time. Mom called me yesterday asking about Dad's pension papers. I read in a message from 3 months ago. I told her I'd handle it, but she kept insisting. I think she's really starting to lose it. But I remembered that call perfectly. I had only asked once about Roberto's pension because the government office had sent me a letter I didn't understand. Patricia said she would help me, and then I never heard about it again. Now I knew why. I'm going to start telling people that Mom is forgetting things, Patricia wrote to Carlos. Yesterday I told Aunt Rosa that Mom asked me the same question 5 times during our phone call. Rosa seemed worried. That was another lie. Rosa is my sister, Roberto's older sister who lives in Guatemala City. I had talked to Patricia only once that week, and I certainly didn't repeat any questions. But Patricia was systematically destroying my reputation, making my own family believe I was losing my mind. I kept scrolling, and each message made me feel sicker. Dr. Martinez at the clinic said he'd be willing to document Mom's mental decline if we bring her in for an evaluation, Patricia wrote. He said confusion and memory loss are common at her age, especially with her blood pressure medication. My blood pressure medication? I take 1 small pill every morning, the same pill I've taken for 10 years. It's never affected my mind, and Dr. Martinez knows that. But apparently, he was willing to lie for Patricia. The neighbors are starting to notice, too, Carlos replied. Mrs. Esperanza told my mother that your mom seemed confused when she talked to her last week. But I knew exactly what conversation he was referring to. Doña Esperanza had asked me about the weather, and I told her it might rain because my arthritis was acting up, something my grandmother had taught me to notice. There was nothing confused about that conversation, but somehow it had been twisted into evidence of my mental decline. I realized that every conversation, every interaction, every moment of my daily life was being monitored and distorted. If I paused to think before answering a question, it was confusion. If I forgot where I put my glasses for 5 minutes, it was memory loss. If I asked for clarification about something, it was asking the same question repeatedly. I think we should start limiting her social interactions, Patricia wrote. The less she talks to people, the less chance there is of someone realizing she's actually fine. That explained why Patricia had been discouraging me from going to church gatherings, from visiting with my neighbors, from attending the weekly market. She told me I was too tired or that people might not understand my condition. She was isolating me, cutting me off from the people who knew the real me. Luis called yesterday asking about Mom. I read in a more recent message. I told him she's getting worse. He wants to visit next month, but I think I'll tell him she's having a bad week and shouldn't have visitors. Luis is my youngest son. He lives in El Salvador with his family and only gets to visit once or twice a year. The last time he called, I was so happy to hear his voice. But when I asked Patricia to help me call him back, she said he was too busy with work. Now I knew the truth. She was keeping us apart, making sure he wouldn't see that I was perfectly fine. Once we get guardianship, we can move her to one of those homes for elderly people, Carlos wrote. There's a nice one in Mexico that's not too expensive. She'd probably be happier there with people her own age. A nursing home. They wanted to put me in a nursing home and sell my house. The house where I had lived for 50 years, where every corner held memories, where I felt closest to Roberto's spirit. They wanted to warehouse me with strangers while they lived in luxury with my money. But the worst message was the last one I read, sent just 2 days before Patricia's visit. I'm getting tired of pretending to care about her feelings, Patricia wrote to Carlos. The sooner we get this over with, the better. I have my own life to live, and I can't keep babysitting an old woman who should have planned better for her retirement. Babysitting. That's what caring for your mother had become to her. Babysitting. I set the phone down and looked around my living room, at the photographs of Patricia's graduation, her wedding, her children, my grandchildren whom I rarely saw anymore, at the embroidered cushions I had made with these same hands. She now wanted to declare incompetent, at the altar where I prayed every morning for my family's health and happiness. Everything I saw with new eyes, every kindness Patricia had shown me recently, every concern for my health, every suggestion that I should take it easy. It was all part of a plan to steal my life from me. The daughter I had raised, the woman I had sacrificed everything for, saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to overcome. My dear friends, that night was the longest of my entire life. I cried until I had no tears left to shed. Every sob came from the deepest part of my soul, from a pain I didn't even know existed. I sat in my wicker chair until well past midnight, holding Patricia's phone like it was evidence of a crime, which in many ways it was. The crime of a daughter betraying her mother's love, trust, and sacrifice. At 2 a.m, when the streets of Antigua were silent except for the occasional dog barking in the distance, I did something I hadn't done since Roberto died. I got down on my knees on the cold tile floor of my living room and talked to God like I was talking to my oldest friend. "Why, Lord," I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. "Why do you allow the daughter I loved so much to do this to me? Haven't I suffered enough? Haven't I given enough?" I poured my heart out there on that floor, surrounded by the darkness of my house and the darkness of my despair. I raised her with love, with sacrifice, with every ounce of strength I had. I gave her everything, my jewelry, my health, my youth, my dreams, and this is how she repays me? The silence that followed felt like God himself had abandoned me. But then, as I knelt there in my anguish, I remembered the voice of my grandmother, Mama Chonita, who had raised me after my own mother died when I was 12. "Dulcinea Micha," I could hear her saying, as clearly as if she were sitting right there with me. When the storm is at its strongest, it's because God is preparing something beautiful. The darkest hour comes just before dawn. Mama Chonita had lived through the earthquake of 1976, had buried 3 children, had survived wars and poverty and heartbreak, but she never lost her faith. Even when she died at 89, she was still telling me that God had a plan for everything. "But Mama Chonita," I whispered to her memory, "I'm 72 years old. I'm tired. How much more can I endure?" And then, as if my grandmother's spirit was truly there with me, I remembered something else she used to say. The strongest trees are not the ones that never face storms, but the ones that learn to bend without breaking. I had been bending for so long, bending to Patricia's moods, to her demands, to her version of reality, but I hadn't broken. Despite everything, I was still here, still thinking clearly, still capable of recognizing injustice when I saw it. God, I prayed, my voice growing stronger, if you're listening, I need your help, not just to survive this, but to fight it. Give me the wisdom to know what to do, the courage to do it, and the strength to see it through. As I knelt there, something shifted inside me. The helpless old woman who had been crying all evening began to transform into someone I hadn't been in years, a fighter, a mother who wouldn't go quietly into the darkness Patricia had planned for me. I thought about all the women in my family who had faced impossible odds. Mama Shonita surviving the earthquake, my great-grandmother living through the revolution, my own mother working in the coffee fields to feed her children before she died so young. None of them had given up. None of them had accepted defeat just because someone told them they were powerless. I am Dulcinea Montemayor, I said aloud, my voice echoing in the empty room. I am the daughter of strong women, the wife of an honorable man, the mother who sacrificed everything for her children. I will not be thrown away like garbage just because I'm old. The decision came to me with such clarity, it felt like divine inspiration. I would not be Patricia's victim. I would not let her lies destroy my reputation or steal my home. I would fight back with every breath in my body, but I needed help. I needed allies. I needed people who would believe me when I told them the truth about what Patricia was planning. As the first light of dawn began to creep through my windows, I made a mental list of everyone I could trust. My sister Rosa in Guatemala City, Don Miguel the lawyer, who had been Roberto's friend, my neighbor Doña Carmen, who had known me for 30 years, Father Antonio at the church who had watched Patricia grow up. These were people who knew the real me, who wouldn't be fooled by Patricia's lies about my mental state. I picked up Patricia's phone one more time and took pictures of the most damaging messages with my old camera. If Patricia wanted to play games with the truth, she was about to learn that her old mother still had a few tricks of her own. Thank you, Lord, I whispered as the sun rose over the volcanic mountains surrounding Antigua. Thank you for giving me one more fight in me. Thank you for reminding me that I am stronger than I thought. Patricia had made one crucial mistake in her planning. She had forgotten that the woman she was trying to destroy was the same woman who had raised her, who had fought for her, who had never backed down from a challenge when her family was at stake. She was about to learn that her mother was far from finished. A new day dawned, and with it, a new Dulcinea was born. For the first time in months, I felt clear-headed and determined. The victim that Patricia thought she was manipulating had disappeared, replaced by a woman who remembered her own worth. The first thing I did was call my sister Rosa in Guatemala City. Rosa is 2 years younger than me, but she's always been the practical one in our family. When Roberto died, she was the one who helped me understand all the legal paperwork. If anyone would know what to do, it would be her. Rosa, I said when she answered the phone, I need to tell you something very important, and I need you to listen carefully. Of course, Hermana, what's wrong? You sound different. I sound different because I am different. Yesterday I discovered something terrible about Patricia, and I need your help. I told her everything, about the cruel words, about finding the phone, about the messages planning to steal my house and declare me incompetent. Rosa listened in complete silence, which scared me at first. Maybe Patricia had already poisoned her mind against me too. Dulcinea? Rosa finally said, her voice filled with anger. That ungrateful girl has gone too far. I never liked that husband of hers. Carlos always struck me as greedy, but I never imagined Patricia could be so cruel to her own mother. Relief flooded through me. Rosa believed me. She knew I was telling the truth. What should I do? I asked her. First, we need to protect your assets immediately. Do you remember Don Miguel Herrera, Roberto's friend, who helped you with the house papers when Roberto died? I did remember him. Don Miguel was an honest lawyer who had charged us very little and had treated us with genuine respect. Yes, but Rosa, I don't have money to pay a lawyer. Hermana, this is not about money. This is about justice. Don Miguel is a good man, and when he hears what Patricia is planning, he'll help you. I'm sure of it. After talking to Rosa, I felt stronger. But I needed more allies. I walked over to my neighbor, Doña Carmen's house. Carmen has lived next door to me for 30 years. She's 78 years old, sharp as a tack, and has never been fooled by anyone's lies. Carmen, I said, sitting in her kitchen while she prepared coffee, I need to ask you something important. Have you noticed anything strange about me lately? Do I seem confused or forgetful to you? Carmen looked at me like I had asked if the sky was purple. Dulcinea, what kind of question is that? You're one of the sharpest women I know. Just last week you helped me calculate my grandson's school expenses, and you did the math faster than I could. Why would you ask such a thing? I told her about Patricia's plan, and Carmen's face grew darker with each detail. That girl needs a good lesson in respect, she said, stirring her coffee with more force than necessary. I've watched you for 30 years, Dulcinea. You take care of your house, you manage your money, you remember everyone's birthdays. If you're losing your mind, then I'm ready for the grave. Her words gave me courage. Will you help me if I need you to testify that I'm mentally competent? I'll do more than that, Carmen said firmly. I'll call every woman in this neighborhood who knows you. We'll form our own army of witnesses if we have to. Next, I visited Father Antonio at the church. He's been our parish priest for 15 years and has known Patricia since she was a teenager. I found him in the garden behind the church, tending to the roses that his predecessor had planted decades ago. Father, I said, I need spiritual guidance, but I also need practical help. I explained the situation, and Father Antonio's expression grew sadder with each word. I'm not surprised, he said quietly. Patricia stopped coming to church years ago, and the few times I've seen her, she seemed different, harder, more focused on material things. Will you help me? I asked. Dulcinea, I've watched you serve this community for decades. You've embroidered altar cloths, you've helped prepare meals for church events, you've visited sick parishioners. If anyone tries to say you're not capable of managing your own affairs, they'll have to answer to me. By the end of that day, I had assembled my team. Rosa with her practical knowledge, Don Miguel with his legal expertise, Carmen with her fierce loyalty, Father Antonio with his moral authority, and several other neighbors who had known me for years. But most importantly, I had found something I thought I had lost, my own inner strength. The woman who had once sold her mother's jewelry to pay for her daughter's education, who had worked her fingers bloody to provide for her family, who had survived widowhood and poverty and heartbreak, that woman was still alive inside me. Patricia thought she was dealing with a weak old lady who would be easy to manipulate and control. She had no idea that she had awakened a lioness who was ready to fight for everything she held dear. As I sat in my wicker chair that evening, looking at the photos I had taken of Patricia's messages, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not just hope for survival, but hope for justice, for vindication, for the chance to show my daughter that the mother she had underestimated was far from finished. The battle was about to begin, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I believed I could win. When Patricia returned for her phone 3 days later, I was no longer the same woman she had left behind. I was prepared, I was strong, and I was ready for war. I heard her car pull up outside my house, and instead of the familiar flutter of excitement I used to feel when she visited, I felt a calm determination settle over me. I was sitting in my wicker chair, her phone on the small table beside me, along with the printed copies of her messages that Don Miguel had helped me make. She knocked on the door, but for the first time in my life, I didn't jump up to answer immediately. Let her wait. Let her feel what it's like to be kept waiting by someone she considered powerless. "Mama?" she called through the door. "I think I left my phone here. Can you open the door?" I counted to 10 before I got up and opened it. When I saw her face, I noticed something I had never seen before. She looked nervous, anxious. Maybe she had realized what was on that phone and was worried about what I might have discovered. "Hello, Patricia," I said calmly, stepping aside to let her in. "Yes, you left your phone. It's been very educational." She gave me a sharp look. "What do you mean?" Instead of answering, I walked back to my chair and sat down. "Please sit," I said, gesturing to the sofa where she had thrown her purse during our last argument. "We need to talk." "Mama, I just came for my phone. I have appointments today and—" "Sit down, Patricia." My voice carried an authority I hadn't used since she was a child. Something in my tone made her stop mid-sentence and slowly lower herself onto the sofa. I picked up her phone and held it in my hands. Your phone has been very informative. It's amazing what technology can teach you about people you thought you knew. Her face went pale. Mama, you shouldn't be looking through other people's phones. That's private. Private? I interrupted, my voice growing stronger. Like your private conversations with Carlos about selling my house? Like your private plans to declare me mentally incompetent? Like your private arrangements with Dr. Martinez to falsify medical records? Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. All the color drained from her face, and for a moment she looked exactly like she did when she was 7 years old, and I caught her stealing cookies from the kitchen. I can explain, she stammered. Explain what, exactly? I reached for the printed papers beside me. Explain this message where you called me the old lady and said I won't last much longer. Or this one where you told Carlos that you're tired of babysitting me. I began reading aloud, my voice steady and clear. The old lady is getting more annoying about the money Roberto left. We need to move fast with the house sale before she gets suspicious. With each word, Patricia shrank smaller in her seat. The confident, cruel woman who had called me a filthy old pig was disappearing, replaced by someone who looked terrified and ashamed. Or maybe you'd like to explain this message, I continued. I'm thinking we should get her declared mentally incompetent so we can take control of everything legally. Mama, please. I'm not finished. For the first time in our relationship, I was the one in control. You told your brothers that I was losing my mind. You told the neighbors I was confused. You planned to put me in a nursing home and sell the house where I've lived for 50 years. The house where you were born, where your father died, where every memory of our family lives. Patricia started to cry, but these weren't the tears of sorrow. They were tears of fear. Fear that her carefully constructed plan was falling apart. And the cruelest part, I said, standing up and walking to the window where I could see the street where she had played as a child, is that you made me believe it was all in my head. You made me question my own sanity, doubt my own memories, feel like I was becoming the confused old woman you were pretending I already was. Mama, I never meant for it to go this far. Carlos has debts and we're desperate, and I thought, you thought what? That because I'm 72 years old I don't deserve respect? That because I'm your mother I don't deserve honesty? That because I sacrificed everything for you, I owe you my house and my dignity too? I turned back to face her and I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Genuine fear of me. Not fear of punishment, but fear of the woman she had awakened. I have already spoken to a lawyer, Patricia. I have already secured my assets. I have already gathered witnesses who will testify to my mental competence. Your plan has failed. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. What are you going to do? I'm going to protect myself, I said simply. Something I should have done a long time ago. And you're going to learn that being someone's mother doesn't mean being their victim. I picked up her phone and handed it to her. Take this and go. And Patricia, don't ever speak to me with disrespect again. I am your mother, not your enemy. But if you continue to treat me like one, you'll discover that I'm a much stronger adversary than you thought. She took the phone with shaking hands and stood up slowly. Mama, can we fix this? I looked at the daughter I had raised, the woman I had sacrificed for, the person who had tried to steal my life from me. I don't know, Patricia. That depends entirely on you. I watched my daughter break down like she did when she was a little girl. But this time, her tears weren't enough. This time, I had learned the difference between genuine remorse and the tears of someone who had been caught. Patricia collapsed back onto the sofa, her whole body shaking with sobs. Mama, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened to me. I don't know how I became this person. For a moment, my mother's heart wanted to reach out to her, to hold her like I did when she had nightmares as a child. But I stayed where I was, standing by the window, keeping my distance both physically and emotionally. Tell me the truth, Patricia, I said quietly. All of it. No more lies. Through her tears, the whole story came pouring out. Carlos had gambling debts, lots of them. They owed money to dangerous people who had started making threats. Their credit cards were maxed out. Their car was about to be repossessed, and they were 3 months behind on rent. When Papa died and left you the house and the savings account, Carlos kept saying it wasn't fair that you had all this money while we were struggling, she sobbed. He said you were too old to need it all, that you'd probably die soon anyway and leave it to us eventually. So you thought you'd just speed up the process? I asked, my voice steady but cold. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she cried. At first, Carlos just suggested that maybe you could help us financially. But when you said the money was for your medical expenses and living costs, he got angry. He said you were being selfish. I sat back down in my chair, trying to process how my daughter could have been so easily manipulated. And the plan to declare me incompetent, that was Carlos's idea too. He said it would be temporary, just until we could get out of debt. He said we'd take good care of you, that you'd be happier not having to worry about managing money and bills. In a nursing home in Mexico, I said flatly. Her face crumpled with fresh tears. I never really wanted that. I swear, Mama. But Carlos said it would only be for a little while, until we got back on our feet. And the lies about my mental state, making my own sons believe I was losing my mind? I thought if everyone believed you needed help, it would make the whole thing seem more legitimate, like we were doing it for your own good. I stared at this woman who had once been my precious daughter, trying to understand how someone I had raised could have convinced herself that stealing from her mother was an act of kindness. Patricia, I said slowly, do you understand what you tried to do to me? She nodded miserably. I tried to take everything from you. No, I said firmly. You tried to take my dignity. You tried to make me doubt my own mind. You tried to convince everyone who knows me that I was incompetent, confused, a burden. You tried to erase me as a person and turn me into just an obstacle to your financial problems. The truth of what I was saying hit her like a physical blow. She doubled over, sobbing harder. Oh God, Mama, what have I done? What have I become? You became someone who forgot where she came from, I said. You became someone who forgot that the old woman you were planning to discard gave up everything so you could have a future. I got up and went to my bedroom, returning with a small wooden box that Roberto had made for me years ago. Inside were all the receipts and papers from Patricia's university years. The pawn shop receipt for my jewelry, the medical bills Roberto and I couldn't afford to pay because we were supporting her education, the bank statements showing how we emptied our savings for her future. Do you remember any of this? I asked, spreading the papers on the coffee table. Do you remember the price of your dreams? Patricia looked at the evidence of our sacrifices, and I saw something shift in her eyes. For the first time, she seemed to truly understand what we had given up for her. I remember, she whispered. I remember you working late into the night on those embroidered pieces. I remember Papa taking extra jobs on weekends. I remember you telling me not to worry about money that God would provide. And do you remember what you promised me when you graduated? I promised to take care of you and Papa forever, she said, her voice breaking. I promised you'd never have to worry about anything again. Instead, you planned to steal my home and lock me away, I said simply. Mama, please forgive me, she begged, reaching out to touch my hand. Please, I'll do anything to make this right. I'll leave Carlos. I'll pay back every centavo. I pulled my hand away gently but firmly. Patricia, forgiveness is a gift I give for my own peace, not for your comfort. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean trusting again. And it doesn't mean there won't be consequences. She looked at me with desperate eyes. What does that mean? It means that I forgive you because my heart is too tired to carry hatred. But it also means that our relationship will never be the same. You've shown me who you really are when you think you have power over me. You've taught me that I can't trust you with my vulnerability. But I can change, she pleaded. I can be the daughter you deserve. I looked at her with all the love and sadness in my heart. Maybe you can, mija. But trust is like a precious vase. Once it's broken, even if you glue it back together, the cracks will always show. My dear friends, God never arrives late, even though sometimes we think he has forgotten about us. In the weeks that followed my confrontation with Patricia, I watched as divine justice began to unfold in ways I never could have imagined. Don Miguel, the lawyer, worked with a dedication that reminded me why Roberto had trusted him so much. Within a week, all my assets were legally protected. My house was secured in a trust that no one could touch. My bank accounts were safeguarded, and I had legal documentation proving my complete mental competency. Doña Dulcinea, Don Miguel told me as we finished the paperwork, your daughter and her husband committed several crimes. Attempted fraud, conspiracy, defamation. You have grounds to press criminal charges if you choose. I thought about this carefully. Part of me wanted Patricia to face the full consequences of her actions, but another part of me, the part that was still her mother, hesitated. What would happen to her, I asked. With the evidence you have, she could face prison time. Her husband definitely would, since he was the mastermind behind most of the planning. I made my decision based on something my grandmother had taught me. Justice should heal, not just punish. I want consequences, but I also want the possibility of redemption, I told him. What can we do that protects me, but also gives Patricia a chance to truly change? Don Miguel smiled. You're a wise woman, Doña Dulcinea. We can file a restraining order requiring Patricia to stay away from you unless you specifically invite her. We can also require her to undergo counseling and make financial restitution for the emotional damage she caused. As for Carlos, his gambling debts and threats against you make him a different case entirely. While the legal proceedings were happening, something wonderful began to occur. My son Luis called from El Salvador, frantic with worry. Mama, he said, I just heard from Patricia that you've been having problems with your memory. Why didn't you tell me? I would have come immediately. Luis, mijo, I said gently, I need to tell you the truth about what's really been happening. When I explained everything, Luis was silent for a long moment. Then he started crying, something I hadn't heard him do since he was a boy. Mama, I'm so sorry. I should have visited more often. I should have talked to you directly instead of believing Patricia's reports. Can you ever forgive me? There's nothing to forgive, mijo. You trusted your sister, as you should have been able to do. She's the one who betrayed that trust. Luis flew to Guatemala the next week, bringing his wife and children, my grandchildren whom I hadn't seen in 2 years. When they saw me, healthy and sharp and clearly competent, Luis hugged me so tightly I thought he might break my ribs. I can't believe we almost lost you to Patricia's lies, he whispered in my ear. Thank God you were strong enough to fight back. My other son, Carmen's boy who lives in Mexico City, called within days of Luis's visit. Patricia had told him the same lies, and he had been planning to come to Guatemala to help manage my affairs. When he learned the truth, he was furious. That's it, he declared. Patricia is no longer welcome in my home. What she did to you is unforgivable. No, mijo, I told him. Don't cut her off completely. She needs family now more than ever, but she needs family who will hold her accountable. Love her, but don't enable her. The most satisfying moment came when several of my neighbors approached me at church one Sunday. Doña Dulcinea, said Doña Carmen, we heard about what Patricia tried to do. We want you to know that not one of us ever believed you were losing your mind. In fact, we were suspicious when she started telling people you were confused. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. We didn't want to interfere in family business, explained another neighbor. But we were keeping an eye on you, ready to speak up if anyone tried to harm you. It turns out that my community had been protecting me all along, watching quietly to make sure I was safe. The lies Patricia had spread about my mental state had actually made people more aware of my situation, not less. Father Antonio made an announcement during Sunday Mass. I want everyone to know that Doña Dulcinea Montemayor is one of the sharpest, most capable members of our parish. Anyone who suggests otherwise is either misinformed or lying. Even Dr. Martinez, the doctor Patricia thought would falsify records about my mental health, came to my house to apologize. Doña Dulcinea, he said shamefully, your daughter approached me with a proposal I should never have considered. I was in debt to her husband for some gambling losses, and I was tempted to help them. But I want you to know, I never would have gone through with it. When I saw you weren't actually suffering from any mental decline, I would have refused. The temptation was enough, doctor, I told him. I'll be finding a new physician. Within a month, my reputation wasn't only restored, but stronger than ever. People admired how I had protected myself, how I had gathered allies, how I had faced down someone trying to take advantage of my age. Carlos, Patricia's husband, wasn't so fortunate. His gambling debts caught up with him, and he ended up in serious legal trouble that had nothing to do with me. Patricia divorced him and moved back to Guatemala City, where she started working as a nurse in a public clinic, the profession she had trained for, but abandoned when she married Carlos. The house I had fought so hard to protect felt like home again. The rooms that had seemed haunted by Patricia's betrayal were filled once more with the laughter of my grandchildren, the conversations of friends, the peace of knowing I was safe. But the most important victory wasn't legal or financial. It was personal. I had rediscovered my own strength, my own worth, my own voice. At 72, I had learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, never too late to demand respect, never too late to refuse to be a victim. Today, as I sit once again in my beloved wicker chair, with my heart healed but made wiser by experience, I want to leave you with the most important lesson I learned from this painful journey. It's been 6 months since that terrible day when Patricia called me a filthy old pig, and my life has transformed in ways I never imagined possible. The woman who once felt powerless and discarded has become someone I'm proud to be. Someone who refused to accept disrespect, even from her own daughter. Patricia and I are slowly, carefully working to rebuild our relationship. But it's different now. She comes to visit every 2 weeks, always respectful, always asking permission before she discusses any topic related to money or my affairs. She's in therapy, working to understand how she became someone capable of such cruelty towards the person who sacrificed everything for her. "Mama," she said during her last visit, "I know I can never undo what I did, but I want you to know that I think about it every day. I think about the mother who sold her jewelry so I could go to university, and I'm ashamed that I repaid that love with betrayal. The shame is useful, mija," I told her, "if it teaches you to be better. But don't let it paralyze you. Use it to become the woman I always hoped you could be." She's paying for her own therapy. She's working at the public clinic helping people who can't afford private health care. And she's volunteering at a nursing home, perhaps to understand what she almost put me through. But the most important change is in how she speaks to me. Never again has she raised her voice. Never again has she dismissed my concerns. Never again has she treated me like I'm an inconvenience in her life. "I'm learning to see you as a person again," she confessed one afternoon, "instead of just as my mother. You have your own dreams, your own needs, your own dignity. I forgot that somewhere along the way. My dear friends who are listening to this story, I want you to understand something crucial. What happened to me could happen to any of you. We live in a world that often sees older people as burdens instead of treasures, as problems to be solved instead of wisdom to be cherished. But I'm here to tell you that your age is not your weakness. It's your strength. The years you've lived, the experiences you've survived, the wisdom you've gained. These are not things to apologize for. They are things to be proud of. Never, ever let anyone, not your children, not your relatives, not anyone, make you feel like you're a burden because you're older. You are not expired goods. You are not past your usefulness. You are not taking up space that belongs to younger people. You are the keepers of family history, the holders of hard-earned wisdom, the survivors of decades of challenges that the young haven't even imagined yet. Your voice matters. Your opinions count. Your dignity is non-negotiable. If someone in your family is treating you with disrespect, if someone is making you question your own mind, if someone is pressuring you to give up control of your life, trust your instincts. You know yourself better than anyone else knows you. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Find your allies, a trusted friend, a neighbor, a member of your church, a lawyer, a doctor who treats you with respect. You are not alone, even when it feels like you are. And remember this, love does not require you to accept abuse. Being someone's mother or father doesn't mean being their doormat. You can love your children deeply while still demanding that they treat you with respect. I learned that protecting myself wasn't selfishness. It was self-respect. Standing up for my rights wasn't being difficult. It was being dignified. Refusing to be victimized wasn't cruelty. It was courage. The house I fought to keep is more than just a building now. It's a symbol of my refusal to be discarded, my insistence on being treated with dignity, my commitment to my own worth. Every morning when I wake up in my own bed, in my own room, surrounded by my own memories, I'm reminded that I chose to fight, and I won. My grandmother's sewing machine, the one I sold to pay for Patricia's books all those years ago, couldn't be recovered. But last month, Luis surprised me with a vintage machine just like it, which he found in an antique shop in San Salvador. "It's not the same machine, Mama," he said as we set it up in the corner where my mother's machine used to be. "But maybe it can help you create new memories while honoring the old ones." I've started embroidering again, not out of financial necessity this time, but for the joy of creating something beautiful with these hands that have lived so much, survived so much, fought so much. And every evening, as the sun sets behind the volcanoes of Antigua, I sit in my wicker chair and thank God for the trial that nearly broke me but ultimately made me stronger. I thank Him for showing me that even at 72, I still had fight left in me. I thank Him for the lesson that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. To all of you who have listened to my story, who have recognized pieces of your own struggles in mine, I want you to know you are valuable, you are worthy of respect, you deserve dignity, and you are never too old to demand what you deserve. Don't let anyone convince you that your time is over, that your voice doesn't matter, that your needs don't count. You have earned your place in this world through decades of living, loving, working, and surviving. Stand tall, speak up, fight back when necessary, and never, ever let anyone treat you like you're disposable. Because you're not disposable, you're irreplaceable. Thank you for walking with me through this story that changed my life forever. If my experience has touched your heart, please share it so it can reach someone else who needs to hear it. And remember, my dear friends, you are worth fighting for, especially when the person you're fighting is yourself. God bless you all, and may you find the strength to demand the respect you deserve.